The Great Wars of Europe. We all know them. World War II, World War One, the Napoleonic Wars, the 30 Years' War. Wait! Feature history guy, he said because you don't know my name. What's a 30 Years' War? Good question. Let's find out today in Feature History. Hello, and welcome to Feature History, featuring the 30 Years' War. Named so because the 29 years, 11 months, 3 weeks and 1 day's war was just really not as catchy. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the rationale of the war and the effect it had throughout history all the way up to the modern day. So if that sounds like a slice of fried gold, well then let's go. Now, I'm going to do something real crazy, real revolutionary, and we're going to talk about the background. The 30 Years' War started in 1618 and ended in, say it with me, 1648, very good. It was a war about the Protestant Reformation. Now, understanding the Protestant Reformation is pivotal to understanding the 30 Years' War, but this video isn't called the 30 Years' War and the Protestant Reformation, so what are we gonna do? Well, luckily for you, I featured in a video over at Jabsy's channel doing a 3-minute history video on the Protestant Reformation and the German Peasants' War. So go click on that if you didn't come from there, and check it out. You'll love it, I'm sure of it. So I'm going to quickly recap what was said in that video, which links to our topic. We have the Catholics and the Protestants at each other's throats. Tensions high, and there's been quite a few wars. In 1555, an attempt was made to settle everything. The Peace of Augsburg was made and introduced the idea of cuius regno, eius religio, which is Latin for basically, whoever reigns, the official religion is his. Noted, if your religion was not either Catholic or Lutheran, well then you're shit out of luck. If we move over to the Holy Roman Empire, you'll see that it's not perfectly united. That really sums up all of the HRE's history, but here I'm referring specifically to the distribution of Catholics and Protestants. So what happens when you have a ruler who's Catholic ruling over a Protestant majority? Well, the quick answer is a lot of angry Protestants. To address this, Emperor Rudolf II granted Protestants toleration through a letter of majesty in 1609. Rudolf's house, the House of Habsburg, all decided that he's not exactly what they're looking for in the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, and so he was replaced by his brother Matthias. By the time Matthias had fully taken over, he realized as an aging, childless monarch he was not doing anyone any favors, and so ended up handing over rulership to his cousin, Ferdinand II. Ferdinand II took power in 1617 as the Holy Roman Emperor and the King of Bohemia. He was a devout Catholic, and so after ascending to rulership he decided to revoke the letter of majesty. We now go to Bohemia, which is the modern-day Czechoslovakia, which I suppose is the modern-day Czech Republic and Slovakia. The Protestants there were furious, and so on the 23rd of May 1618 they retaliated and threw the councillors Ferdinand had administering the region in his absence out the window. This was known as the defenestration, which is a fancy word for throwing someone out the window, of Prague. Actually, it was the second defenestration of Prague. Believe it or not, in 1419 they'd done that before. Shockingly enough, after falling 21 meters, these councillors survived. Catholics claimed that angels had swept down and saved these righteous men. Protestants said they fell in a pile of shit. With this retaliation, the Bohemian revolt had started, and so of course the 30 Years' War did as well. Now, what's critical to understand about the 30 Years' War is it is separated into 4 phases. The Bohemian phase, the Danish phase, the Swedish phase, and the French phase. In the first 2 phases of the war, it was predominantly a local and religious struggle, whereas in the second 2 it became a truly continental and political war. So now with Bohemians in open revolt, the rebellious fervour began to spread across Germany. So Ferdinand reached out to his nephew, Philip IV of Spain, for assistance. He agreed, as this conflict would help offer the Spanish an opportunity to reconquer the Dutch. The Bohemians needed a major power to back them, and so started sending out deals to everyone they could think of. These letters were seized by the Austrians though, who made it public that Bohemians were whoring out the same deals to multiple people, so most people backed away from the Bohemians. Frederick V was elected as the King of Bohemia in 1619, and so whether or not he wanted to be in this situation, he was now. On the 8th of November 1620, Frederick and Ferdinand's armies confronted each other in the Battle of White Mountain, where Ferdinand decisively defeated the Bohemians. So the Bohemian phase really closes there, and it seems as this would have just been a short local dispute if it wasn't for the fact that it raised up many pressing concerns for all European monarchs, and several Protestant leaders kept close tabs on these happenings, so it wasn't too long before someone decided to intervene. Denmark was directly north of the HRE and even had several holdings in the HRE, so you could see why the Protestant King of Denmark, Christian IV, had a vested interest in this conflict. Denmark, England and Scotland joined to protect the still standing Dutch, who I've completely neglected up to this point, but basically they're there, they're Protestant, they're near the HRE, you get the story. It might also be worth mentioning that they would be obviously facing the HRE, which consisted of Austria and Bohemia because Bohemia had been taken back, Spain, Hungary, and Croatia. I can't constantly be updating you on who joins and leaves the war, otherwise I'd spend 73% of the video doing it, so I made a chart, and by that I mean I stole a chart I found on Wikipedia and printed it up, and you can find that in the description. Moving on, in 1625, Denmark's armies headed south with their heads held high and then headed north with everyone who still had heads. They'd been firmly repelled by the Catholic mercenary Albrecht von Wallenstein. To summarize the Danish phase, it's basically just another Protestant defeat. Now, as I said earlier, up to this point all the fighting had been contained to the HRE and had been fought purely on a religious basis. But in 1630 begins the Swedish phase. Interestingly enough, the beginning of the Swedish invasion coincides with Ferdinand losing his trust in Wallenstein and dismissing him. One character I want you to particularly turn your attention to is King Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden. He's a Lutheran, a commander, and an all-around badass. He descends into the HRE to the Protestants' aid and achieved victory at the Battle of Breitenfeld in credit to his use of mobile artillery, which saw him be referred to as the father of modern warfare. Now, if you look at the chart, you'll note France is listed as against the HRE during this period. To explain that, France was helping to fund Sweden's war effort during this phase. So while Gustavus was leading the charge, back in France, Louis XIII was getting together the money to make this possible. You might be asking yourself, why is France, a Catholic country, helping the Protestant Swedes? Well, actually, this is where what I was getting at earlier comes into play. The religious basis of this war became less and less prevalent, and politics really became the deciding factor in most choices. So what pushed France to join Sweden? Well, it's all about the balance of power. You'll notice this concept a lot if you study French-German relations for any extended period of time. France, knowing it was surrounded by the Habsburg, saw backing Sweden as a way to bring the Habsburg down a notch and secure a more balanced and equal playing field in Europe. So with all that explained, we're ready to delve into the French-backed Sweden taking over HRE, and oh shit, Gustavus just died. Like any true commander, Gustavus Adolphus died in battle while leading a cavalry charge on the 6th of November 1632. With Gustavus's death, Sweden decided it would like to take more of a backseat role in the war, so in 1635 Sweden tags in France. Sweden will be handling the budget and France will take care of the more hands-on business. So now we have two major powers going full force with no stupid Baltic Sea in between them. As you can imagine, this was the longest, the bloodiest, and the truly defining part of this war. Given that, I'd prefer to really summarize this part. There was a resurgence in witch hunts, mass hangings, and other tragedies of war. Some areas lost over 66% of their population. More people died in the 30 Years' War than the American Civil War and Napoleonic Wars combined. Another way to contextualize this would be that World War I killed 1.7% of the population, whereas the 30 Years' War, without machine guns, planes, tanks, and high-powered artillery, killed 1.4%. That's only a 0.2% of a difference. So after all this, after 30 years of fighting, like most wars, the result is inconclusive. In 1648, the Peace of Westphalia is signed. It weakens the Holy Roman Emperor, stripping their control over the princes and really completely destroying the idea of the Holy Roman Empire as any kind of actual empire. The Dutch also get their independence from the Spanish, but they of course don't get all their de jure lands back. Brandenburg gains territory, leading to the rise of Brandenburg/Prussia. If you want to know why Prussia is important, I'd recommend part 2 of my 19th century France video. You might want to watch part 1 as well. Actually, just watch all my videos. Territory goes to France, really starting to solidify the French-German rivalry that lasted all the way up to World War II, and Switzerland gains its independence from the HRE as a confederation. If you desperately want a winner, I think you'd be relatively safe in claiming a French victory, but if you have any particularly snobbish friends, they might flip out at you. Well, other than of course redrawing the borders, what else did the 30 Years' War accomplish? Freedom of religion began to seep more into society, with Calvinism being accepted and people being granted the freedom of private worship. Religion began to withdraw from the main stage of European diplomacy, and instead politics began to be a much larger player. I might not agree with this filthy Frenchman, but hey, at least I get what I want, so I'll work with him. That kind of thing. The 30 Years' War was very much the climatic end of an era. It was not only the final war of the Protestant Reformation, but also the final religious war in Europe. Hopefully. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw because it was a real headache attempting to wrap my head around early modern European history. I'd like to thank Jabzy very much for working with me. I'm imagining 80% of viewers of this video came from Jabzy's channel, but if you didn't, you really should check him out. His videos are great. So please give me a like or a dislike, as long as I get some reaction out of you, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Well, not really, I'll just be looking at the view account with a dumb grin on my face.